I'm going to jump back to our code here. Now, the approach that we took is designing for the desktop and then overriding styles as the browser gets smaller into a mobile version. What that will mean for how the styles get processed in the browser is that if we're at a full desktop version, the browser will see these styles. It will check this breakpoint and see that it doesn't match up with the size of the browser because the browser is bigger than this one column breakpoint, and so it will skip processing these styles altogether, and then it will continue processing the rest. And now if we had a smaller browser, say on a smartphone, the browser would start processing these styles, it would check the breakpoint, find that this condition is true, and then it will process these styles here. So the smaller the screen, the more CSS is going to be processed by the browser. But also, in general, the smaller a screen is, the less processing power it's going to have. Now, again, we've talked about performance in CSS, and that there's not a huge amount of difference between the most performant CSS and the least performant CSS. But still, we're kind of heading in a direction where we're putting more of a burden on our smaller devices. So in a way, it would make sense to reverse this. Conceptually, this is going to be harder because right now, when we're looking at our design, we're thinking about the desktop first, and then we're adjusting those styles for the mobile version. In our brains, that's what we're doing because we have a design already for the desktop, but not for the mobile version. So if we were going to rewrite our code to focus on mobile first so that the mobile version has the least amount of styles to load, we're going to have to reverse our thinking a bit. And this can definitely hurt the brain. So let's explore how we would convert this over to mobile first code, even though our design is really desktop first. Now we can do a lot of this without looking at the design. We're going to go to each breakpoint and swap out the styles that are being overridden. So in here, we're overriding the float, setting the text align to center, and setting the margin bottom. So what we're going to do is cut all of these out and we'll paste it outside of the breakpoint. And now we're going to take the styles that conflict with these, which really is only this float right here, and we'll cut it and paste that into the breakpoint. But now that's not all, because now we have this text align and this margin bottom to override in our breakpoint. If we don't, these will be applied to our default style. So let's set the text align to what the default would be, which would be left, and let's set the margin bottom to whatever it would be by default, which in this case would be 0. And now instead of defining a max width, we're going to define a minimum width. So now what we're saying is that when the browser is small, we're going to use these styles. But when the browser has a minimum width of this 1010 pixel width, then we're going to apply these styles. So that means that for the smaller version, these styles will be applied and processed, but then the conditions in the breakpoint will be false, so it will skip all of these. So again, potentially more performant for the mobile version. So the way we can change this to min width is simply by removing max width. Let's go to where our other breakpoints are, and we have one for our nav wrapper here. So we'll remove the max width keyword to switch it over to min width, and we'll take this width now, and we'll set that as the default, and we'll use our fixed width here now in the breakpoint. That one was pretty easy. And now for our third one, which is in our social nav, we'll again remove the max width keyword. We'll take all of these styles and we'll move them outside of the breakpoint. We'll move our original float to the breakpoint, and now we need to override these styles here. So we'll do text align, set it to left, and we'll set the margin bottom to 0. Now the default CSS style for divs and navigation elements is a float of none. So we can remove this here, and we can also remove it up top where we added it here. So let's save this and go back to the browser and refresh. And you see we have our 3-column layout, and as we get smaller, we bump to the single column layout. If we stretch the browser to 110 pixels exactly, you can see that we get the 3-column layout. Right now we're checking for a minimum width of 110 pixels in order to apply our desktop browser styles. So 110 pixels will get triggered now to pull those in, whereas before, when we had max width, in order to pull in the small browser styles, the mobile browser styles, at 1010 pixels, it would still be triggering the max width, so the mobile styles would still be being applied at this point. Again, for this situation, this 1 pixel difference doesn't make much of a difference because we have a bit of a buffer to work with. But occasionally it might be important.